Welcome back to the channel. This game continues the match Nigel was playing against Lev Alburt, the US champion. Originally I was going to do all 8 games, but game 2 was quite an uneventful draw. So this is game 3, where Nigel's still a point to the good after winning the first game. The game started as an Alekhine defence, as in game 1. All normal stuff. Pawn kicks to knight, which retreats to b6. And this is all still known theory, c5. And here white opts to take the bishop back with the g pawn, opening up the g pawn, the g file, sorry, for maybe a later attack against the black king. The knight has to retreat, and therefore, and I think this line certainly gives white a bit of an advantage. He's got the open g line for his rook, and space advantage in the centre, and black looks very cramped. But it's a line that Albert used to play, or the Alekhine defence was a defence that Albert played throughout the match. Making more space on the queen side. Obviously, if the knight takes b4, then rook to b1 would regain the pawn. And f6, trying to put a bit of pressure on the centre. But you would say white's in a very good position already. Bishop d3, just getting the bishop onto a better diagonal. Maybe a bit premature, the queen coming out. Obviously attacking e6, but it does allow f5 with tempo. And here Albert tries to undermine the queen side, but it does allow b5, which gives white a very nice advantage. Obviously attacks the bishop retreats, and the knight comes into c2. And I don't think Nigel's remotely bothered about the fact that the black bishop's under attack, because he can retake with the f pawn, undoubling his pawns. So a bit of a weird situation where the knight's gone into c2, but he's not really threatening anything, and eventually he's going to have to get himself out of trouble. And white duly takes the g file. And a bit of manoeuvring in the middle game. White hits the black knight, which, as mentioned before, doesn't really want to take the bishop, so it goes to a3. I mean, it probably taking the bishop would maybe have been the better option in this position, because the knight looks out of play. I know he's going to go to c4, but eventually he's going to get traded off quickly. It hasn't got really any squares, so maybe giving itself up for the bishop might have been a better option. Bishop retreats and threatening to unleash a discovered attack against the knight. And black's just trying to get some play for his pieces, putting a bit of pressure on the b5 square, which white defends. And rook to d1, and I think white's got a very comfortable position. The engine gives it a plus 2.23. There's a space advantage, and the black knights are not very good. And just in general, white's position is much better, easier to play. The queen comes back again with the idea, I think, of hitting the knight, and when it goes to c4, just swapping it off and winning the pawn. And this is a bit of a weird move from black. He's trying to sort of put pressure on the f pawn, but maybe something like c6, trying to sort out the queen side would have been a better option. As mentioned before, the knight would probably have dropped, and this would have been quite nice for white, but black position is quite bad anyway, but this may have been his best option. Because after this move, the rook just attacks the knight, which has to go to c4, and white wins the pawn. c6 does come now, and Nigel chooses just to push on, getting more space, and the black knight gets kicked back to c8. And Nigel takes the a pawn, which can't be defended, so he's going to pick up that a pawn at some point. And that's just to defend queen to h4, which was the threat. So the pawn duly drops. Queen to h4 anyway, and queen to f3, just defending the f pawn. g5, putting more pressure on the f pawn. Obviously threatening to take it or play g4. But Nigel pins the knight against the rook, which is uncomfortable for black. He chooses to take the pawn. And here Nigel just plays knight to e2 to threaten to win the pawn back. Black defends. And Nigel decides just to roll the a pawn, going to a5, a6, and then if it's taken, then b7. The king comes out to try and centralise. Nigel continues his plan a5, which may have been a bit of a mistake. Rook to g1 looks a much better move, forcing the trade of rooks. And the problem is the rook can't come to g4 to defend the pawn because the knight would have to drop on c8. So he goes back and rook to b8 would threaten the b pawn, which can't really be defended, and the whole queen side would collapse. So white would be totally winning. An interesting line, which obviously Nigel didn't play. He played a5 just to continue in his plan, but it does allow the next move from black, which in turn tries to untangle himself with knight to d6. And rook took, so he's got a nice intermezzo with knight to e4. Threatening knight takes a f2 check. So obviously that has to be defended, and now black can pick up the rook. And knight to c3, and this is Nigel's only mistake in the game, and it was quite a bad one in the fact it allowed the draw with correct play. Black missed it, but he could have played queen to h4, and the threat is knight to g5. And so white has to do something about it. And after the trade of knights, then queen to h3 threatening f3, and also the rook. The rook has to move, and are traded, and then queen to g4. And this actually leads to perpetual check and a draw, as white can't get out of the checks from d1 and g4. So black could have actually drawn the game. Not easy to see, but it would have been a bit of a get out of jail for Albert. He missed it though. He played knight to g5, which was quite natural. But after queen to d3, white's still winning. f3, and the trade of bishop for knight, and the pawn comes off, and the d pawn comes off. And now this allows a nice move in a6, which He's threatening a7, so the pawn has to be taken. But now the b pawn becomes a real danger. First Nigel kicks the rook, and now b7. And there's very little ways to stop. If queen to b4, then obviously rook to b1 would win. So he has to take the pawn on e5, rook to b1 anyway, and queen to b8. And now the queen is forced to always keep an eye on the b8 square. So queen to g3, threatening the trade of queens. And here Nigel just played queen to f3. He could have quite easily played queen takes g5. And after this variation, he'd be totally winning. But queen to f3 was just as good. Bishop comes back to try and get onto a decent diagonal. And knight to e4, just threatening knight to d6 check, knight to g5 check at some point. The bishop defends the check on d6, rook to g1, grab an open file. It does allow, obviously now, queen takes b7. But after queen to c3, with the threat of on g7, black has to give up material. So he didn't take the pawn, he played rook to h6. And knight to g5 check with a discovered attack on the c6 pawn, which is taken. Bishop e5, but now it's hopeless. White's got many ways to win. Rook to d1's threatening rook to d7 check. The queen moves, but this allows rook to d7 check, and the black queen must give itself up after rook to f7. If it doesn't, if it say goes to g6, then queen takes e6 with check, and this is false mate. So the queen has to give herself up. And after king to g2, just to defend the h pawn, the b pawn's gonna queen, and the bishop's gonna have to give itself up, and the a pawn's gonna drop as well. So Albert resigned. So Nigel came 2 points up in the match. In a match that was slated to be quite close because they were both evenly rated, and Nigel being younger than his opponent, there was a worry that Nigel might struggle, but he's made a really good start to the match. I'll be back with game 4. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and until next time, bye for now.